What is going on, y'all? Welcome back to week 3 of Addy's Action, where I'm going to be breaking down this week 3 NFL main slate with a bit more of a tournament approach in mind. I'm going to be going over a few of my favorite low-owned quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end plays. You guys know the drill. Same thing every week. I hope you guys had a good week too. Mine was a little bit in the middle. I missed cash games. This was my lineup, 126.12. This is a head-to-head. I won. I picked one that I won. I won about 35 to 40% of them, but lost double up. So not my finest week. The plays that I recommended were okay. I was really into a Roethlisberger Pittsburgh stack with either Juju or Vance McDonald. Vance McDonald scored 2 touchdowns, neither from Roethlisberger, who obviously left the game early. So we never really got to see what he would do. But with the way Mason Rudolph looked, one would be safe to assume that a healthy Ben Roethlisberger would have done fairly well. But yeah, just a decent week. I mean, nothing crazy. Still good enough to get some rebate, which is really helpful to not get totally felted on one slate. So some rebate helps. The showdown slates were good. But moving on from this, if you guys are interested in following me on Twitter, you can do so at ReallyAddy. If you want to follow Locks DFS, you can do so at Locks DFS. And if you want to get yourself a patch, just go to locksdfs.com, scroll down a little bit, and you'll see a bunch of options available for NFL season passes. And as always, we are running the same giveaway on this video. Christian picked the winner of last week's giveaway on his video, so if you haven't checked that out, go check that out. He posted it yesterday. Where really we just all you got to do is leave a like, leave a comment. We go through all 3 videos at the end of the week, and we pick a winner for a free season pass of your choice. Everyone's been choosing NFL, so I'm assuming you will choose NFL if you win. But yeah, just leave a like, leave a comment, and you'll be entered into that. So with that being said, let's jump into the slate, because this is the most ridiculous slate I've seen in quite some time. And in all the good ways. I mean, there's just such a plethora of good plays. Not just good plays, but like a plethora of like really, really great plays on this slate. And just because of the nature that a lot of them are going to come in fairly low owned. So you can make some really, really fun builds, some really good teams. They're just such an insane amount of spots to look at. So we're going to jump into it. So as you guys know, we jump into it by starting with quarterback, and we go over some of the highest owned QBs and then where we can differentiate from. So some of the highest QBs I'm seeing, definitely not coming in as like a high-owned group, like a position in general. It's coming in a bit more, like wide receivers, tight ends are coming in much more chalkier. Running backs coming in much more chalkier. But quarterbacks, the highest owned quarterback I'm seeing is Pat Mahomes at around 16% on DK, on DraftKings. After that, I'm seeing guys like Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray as the next 4, so that'd be the top 5 highest owned QBs. After that, guys like Tom Brady, etc. But a guy who I haven't listed yet, who I'm a huge fan of, is going to be Jameis Winston at 5,400. I know we've been burned a lot by Jameis Winston in the past, but it doesn't change the fact that this is still a super fantasy-friendly offense versus, or that Bruce Arians is running. He has a history of making quarterbacks look better, or has a history of quarterbacks having a better, fantasy production than maybe real life production. And he's got as good of a matchup as you can ask for, and that's really what it comes down to. He's got a matchup versus the Giants, who rank. Let me see if I can pull it up for you. Actually, they rank second from the bottom in pressure, which is really what you're looking for with someone like Jameis Winston, who is prone to turnovers. And they're also ranked last in the league in coverage. So it's just a total nut spot for Jameis Winston versus a team that's just not going to be able to apply any pressure to him, not going to be able to make him uncomfortable at all. And on the bright side, they do have a pretty monster team total at 27, which is sneakily one of the higher team totals on the slate. You're going to see a guy like, Pat Mahomes get almost, 4 or 5 times the ownership of Jameis Winston. Their team total is only, 2 points higher. Obviously, I love Pat Mahomes. This is like an awesome matchup for him versus pass funnel Ravens team. But that just goes to show that Jameis is coming in a bit lower owned than anticipated. On the flip side of this, Daniel Jones has taken over for Eli Manning. So there's a good chance that we're going to see the Giants be more competitive in games, which could render this game more likely to be a shootout than if Eli Manning were starting. Just because Daniel Jones with those weapons, they should put up a fair amount of points. So if this game does explode into a shootout, I mean, you're seeing like a lot of these Tampa Bay weapons like Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, OJ Howard. They're all getting talked about across the industry, yet no one's really mentioning Jameis Winston. So I like the guy that's going to make it all happen for them. I like the price on him, and I think this is a great spot to go after him. Scrolling down a little bit farther at quarterback, one guy I just have to talk about, and I'm assuming he's going to come in higher owned than ownership projections are showing right now, but that's Kyle Allen. I mean, he's 4K. That's all I should really have to say. He's a starting quarterback. He's 4K in an awesome matchup. Arizona still missing their top two cornerbacks, including Patrick Peterson, all-world cornerback. So we're definitely going to be interested in going after Kyle Allen in this matchup. This is a ridiculous spot as far as pace goes, and that's what we really have to note in this Carolina-Arizona game. As you see on Football Outsiders pace rankings, Carolina ranks first in the league in seconds per play. Arizona right behind them at second. Situation neutral. They're sixth and second. It's just as high of a pace spot that we're going to see in football. And getting the quarterback who's supposed to be trailing, should be throwing the ball a bit more. And it's not like Cam Newton was like particularly good, but him in this matchup would be what? Over 6K. So I really don't mind Kyle Allen, 4K. Again, a guy whose weapons are being talked about. Everyone's talking about Christian McCaffrey. Greg Olsen is good low-owned tight end play, as well as those wide receivers, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore coming in low-owned. I'm going to talk about DJ Moore as we go on. But a game where all the weapons are being talked about, yet the quarterback is not coming in that highly owned as of Saturday night. I think come Sunday morning, it'll go up a bit, but at 4K, you just can't really go wrong here. You're not making a mistake by playing him, as you could be by playing some other quarterbacks. Paying 4K for a starting quarterback, just never a mistake. Moving on to running back, though. Running backs coming in fairly chalky on this slate are Ezekiel Elliott, Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey above that, Chris Carson after that. That's the top 5, I believe I just listed. And then, of course, Frank Gore. He's kind of back in the fold with the injury to Devin Singletary. All those guys, great plays, but not enough talk about David Johnson, 6,800. 3 down back. He did suffer a little bit of a wrist scare earlier in week 2. But he did return, still handle 60% of the snaps, so they kind of looked like they were splitting the carries in that game at least, or splitting the snaps in that game at least. But I don't really worry about that in this spot. And as we talked about, we got to mention the pace. Again, ridiculously high-paced game. Just so many more opportunities to score fantasy points. He's 6,800. He's going to handle a 3-down roll. In week 1, where he was healthy, he got 7 targets, 6 receptions. That just boosts his floor on DK a massive amount. And if guys around him are going to be owned, I didn't mention Dalvin Cook popping as a really high-owned running back as well. If all these guys are going to be owned, like Dalvin Cook and Austin Eckler, both of them are playing in what should be 2 of the lower-paced games in the league, while David Johnson is playing in what should be the fastest-paced game on the slate. It just seems like a pretty easy situation to fade those 2 guys and come down to a guy like David Johnson. And what else is going to lower his ownership is the fact that Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald are coming in as 2 of the most chalky wide receivers on the entire slate. Everyone wants to play Kyler Murray in this matchup. So do I. I mean, he's just like Christian talked about him. He's just he's an awesome cash game play. But that's just going to leave people not playing David Johnson. They're going to already have enough pieces of Arizona. And he's just going to go lower owned than a 3-down running back for a home favorite team in the highest paced game should be. So big fan of him. If you want to go even lower ownership, a guy that's not being talked about at all is Sony Michel at 6K. He's more of a FanDuel play than a DraftKings play because DraftKings, it's really important to get running backs that can catch the ball and get some sort of PPR points as opposed to FanDuel where it's a half PPR site, not as important. But Sony Michel here, he's going to be facing a similar game script to one he faced last week versus Miami. Again, the Patriots are 20-point favorites versus the New York Jets. But in that game versus Miami, Sony Michel handled 21 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. So if you're looking for a guy who probably has the highest 2-touchdown upside, I would go as far as saying Sony Michel might be that guy as far as most likely to score 2 touchdowns as running backs go. I mean, Zeke is up there, obviously, but there's just so many people that could eat on that Dallas offense that Zeke getting 1 touchdown seems like a lock. 2 definitely seems feasible. But Sony Michel here, I mean, he's second in the league in red zone carries with 8. He's going to get 20-plus carries because the Patriots are going to win this game by 20. And when they do that, they just like to feed Sony, and it should work fairly well. We saw Nick Chubb have a pretty good game versus the same Jets defense. They're missing Quinnen Williams. They're missing C.J. Mosley again this week. Just a real good spot for this Patriots offense to sort of just establish the run and sort of just establish, a massive time of possession advantage over the Jets. So that'll do it for running back. Wide receiver is the position on this slate where a lot of decisions are going to have to be made. There's just such a ridiculous amount of good plays here at wide receiver that you're going to have to really make some tough choices here, especially for my fellow one lineup players. It's going to be tough. I mean, you're going to have to fade some really, really good plays. Chalkiest wide receivers right now, as of Saturday night, we got Keenan Allen, that makes sense. Nelson Aguilar makes sense. John Brown, Julio Jones. The 2 Arizona wide receivers back-to-back, Larry Fitz, Christian Kirk. Marquise Brown, Sammy Watkins, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper. The Kansas wide receivers, Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman. So fairly, I guess it's a fairly wide split of ownership as well, but there's a lot of top-heavy guys here like Keenan Allen and Nelson Aguilar. I mean, if Alshon Jeffrey's ruled out, Aguilar is going to be as chalky as they come. But a few other guys that I like. So the wide receiver one that I like as a tournament play is going to be Mike Evans on this slate. 2 of the guys that I mentioned coming in at higher ownership than him or 3 of them actually even 4 of them. That are coming in higher owned in that very similar price point is Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Sammy Watkins, and Kenny Golladay. All 4 of them are amazing plays in amazing spots. But that is leaving Mike Evans coming in way too low owned. I already talked about this sort of matchup versus the Giants as far as Jameis Winston goes, but second to last in pressure to the Miami Dolphins, which shouldn't even count because that's not an NFL team. So they're basically last in the league in pressure. And last in the league in coverage. They've been flamed by outside wide receivers all season. John Brown had a big game versus him last week. Would have been even bigger. I had him on my lineup. He was overthrown on a 52-yard wide open touchdown. So that game should have been even bigger. And yeah, he's just an awesome player. Week 1 was sort of a fluke because he was sick. Week 2, he rebounded with 8 targets, and this should be the spike week maybe of his season where he should get, 10, 12 targets if this game turns into a shootout, which it could. And he should really explode. He's popping on the buy low model for Josh Hermsmeyer. So, I mean, I think he's 3rd on that wide receiver model, which is just a nut spot for him. So I'm going to be really high on Mike Evans. He's probably going to be the wide receiver that I prioritize in this range in tournaments and maybe even for cash games. Probably for cash games. Anyways, another guy I like a lot is DJ Moore. So the thing with DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel at that matter, Curtis Samuel actually is coming in higher owned than DJ Moore, which I totally get at 4,800. He was the guy that was number 1 on Josh Hermsmeyer's buy low model for wide receivers, which is just sort of like play that guy every week. He's going to regress. But the important note here is what a lot of people would view as a downgrade for Cam Newton leaving the game. Cam Newton had a 34% uncatchable pass rate, which is ridiculously high. It'd be fair to assume that Kyle Allen is not going to be that bad and could probably serve as an upgrade as far as the pass game goes for guys like Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore. And again, the pace. These guys should be trailing in what should be the highest paced game on the slate. Arizona's missing their top 2 cornerbacks. I already talked about they're missing Patrick Peterson. DJ Moore, though, I mean, this guy has, let's see, he's 3rd in the NFL in targets. He's 5th in catches. The role that he plays just feeds targets to the X receiver in this offense, which is DJ Moore. And his price is sort of like uncomfortable. People are going to play Marquise Brown over him. People are going to pay John Brown, who's just barely under him. And then people are going to try and get up into this Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin range. And it's just sort of a weird price on DraftKings where people are just going to overlook him. Obviously, if people are going to be heavily exploring to Christian McCaffrey and just sort of like call that good, and it probably is good, but if you want to run some Kyle Allen, DJ Moore stacks in tournaments, you're going to get it ridiculously low owned, and it has some pretty massive upside. So, two plays that I like a lot there. And now let's move on to tight end. So, tight end, probably the least chalky of the positions. Guys like Mark Andrews coming in fairly highly owned. Zach Ertz coming off that monster 16 target game versus Atlanta, coming in really highly owned. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, excuse me. Some of the high priced guys, Evan Ingram as well. But one guy I want to go back to, and I know I've talked about the Bucks a lot in this matchup, but that's OJ Howard. I mean, yeah, we all know he got no targets last week. Well, he got one, but he got wiped out on his own offensive pass interference penalty, I believe. But it's just important to note that he's 3,800 in this spot, that targets should be plentiful for him. Ideally, I mean, he did sort of get the squeaky wheel treatment with Bruce Arians calling him out earlier in the week. He's still running a lot of routes. He's just not really getting targeted. It could be a trend. I mean, Bruce Arians hasn't really supported many fantasy-friendly tight end ones. Most people thought that was because of the lack of talent in Arizona. Maybe it's more system-based, but I'd be willing to take the chance on him at 3,800. Again, we've talked about the fact that he won't be needing to block much. I mean, this Giants team does not get any pressure. He shouldn't be chipping any defensive ends here. He should just be running straight routes. If he catches a touchdown, if he catches 2 touchdowns, I mean, this was like a fantasy football breakout candidate just 14 days ago. This guy was like talked about as a top 5 tight end in the league, top 5 tight end in fantasy, and now he's priced here underneath Eric Ebron and Jimmy Graham, an injured Hunter Henry, and everyone's paying up at tight end. It seems like most people are going to try to this week. So he's going to be super low owned in comparison to his role. Could definitely be a massive breakout week for him. So I'm super interested in going with OJ Howard, maybe a double stack with OJ Howard, Mike Evans paired with Jameis Winston. There's so many viable double stacks on the slate. You could go like Murray with Kirk and Fitzgerald, or you could go Kyle Allen with like the 2 wide receivers, or Greg Olsen or Christian McCaffrey in a wide receiver. You could go with obviously the Bucks double stack. You could go with a Dallas double stack. I mean, it's a fun slate. So that'll wrap it up as far as positional players go, and as far as this video goes. I hope you guys did enjoy. As always, the same giveaway. Go ahead, leave a like, leave a comment. You'll be entered into winning a free season pass. You can join the NFL team where we post a lock sheet. We post heavily detailed analysis for each showdown slate, as well as a lock sheet for each showdown slate, Sunday morning live stream, all that good stuff. And that comes free if you win the giveaway. And if you want to get it past yourself, just go to locksdfs.com, and that's where you can get it. So with that all being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy. I hope you have a really good week 3, and I will see you all next week. Peace.